The starship glided silently through the violet skies of Zithra, its sleek hull reflecting the twin suns above. Commander Alara Thin watched the world below from the observation deck, her amber eyes tracing the curves of towering crystal cities, floating platforms, and endless bridges that connected the skyward towers. Zithra was beautiful, strange, and precise. Every movement, every building, every light pulse seemed calculated, almost alive with order. Beside her, Kale, her husband, stood quietly. He was human, ordinary in appearance, and yet somehow completely different from anyone she had ever known. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, his deep brown eyes calm, as if nothing in the galaxy could shake him. He didn't speak much, which had been part of why Alara had fallen in love with him. There was a steadiness in him that she had never seen in her own kindest patience. His thoughtfulness, and the way he simply observed before acting. "Are you nervous?" Alara asked, breaking the silence. Kale shook his head. "No, just curious," he replied softly, his voice low but steady. It was a small sound, almost swallowed by the hum of the ship's engines, yet somehow comforting. Alara smiled. Curiosity. That had always been Kel's strength. He had a way of seeing the world differently from anyone else, never rushing to judgment, never panicking, always finding the simplest, clearest solution. And now, here they were, married, stepping into the heart of Zithra's greatest city. The shuttle doors opened with a hiss, and a gust of warm, metallic air greeted them. Below, the landing platform stretched wide, bristling with alien machines and hovering vehicles. The people of Zithra moved with elegant precision, their tall, slender forms gliding past, their bright eyes scanning every detail around them. Most were humanoid, but their skin shimmered with a faint metallic glow, and their hands ended in delicate, precise fingers. Every motion was deliberate, as if they had practiced it for centuries. Alara adjusted the folds of her ceremonial robe, feeling slightly out of place. Humans had a simpler way of dressing, simpler gestures, simpler lives. Yet, Kale did not look out of place. His quiet confidence made him stand tall among the aliens, and Alara could sense the subtle respect he commanded without saying a word. A small hovercar approached, gliding smoothly toward them. Its surface was a liquid silver, reflecting the sun as it landed. The doors opened, and a Zytheran aide stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Commander Thin, Mr. Kale." The aide said in perfect, melodious tones, "Welcome to Zithra. The council awaits your arrival at the central tower." Kale nodded politely. "Thank you," he said as they rode the hovercar through the city. Alara marveled at the view. Bridges of translucent crystal stretched between massive towers. Vehicles floated silently through the air, leaving trails of faint light. Holographic signs danced above the streets, offering information about the city, advertisements for trade goods, and guidance for visitors. Yet beneath the beauty, Alara sensed something else: a strict order, a sense that everything had a purpose and no mistakes were tolerated. "This city is incredible," she whispered, mostly to herself. Kale glanced at her, his lips curling into a faint smile. "It's impressive, but it feels too still, like it's holding its breath." Alara frowned. He had a point. The Zytherans moved perfectly, their motions precise, yet there was an unnatural calm to them. Even the air seemed tense, as if the city were aware of every step, every thought. She felt a small shiver run down her spine. Humans were unpredictable, she thought. Maybe that was why Kale seemed so out of place, and yet he belonged here more than she expected. They arrived at the central tower, a massive spire of glowing crystal that stretched high into the clouds. The entrance was grand, flanked by guards in polished armor that shimmered like liquid metal. They nodded to Kale, and for a brief moment, Alara saw the same spark of curiosity in their eyes that she had always admired in him. Inside, the council chamber was a vast room, circular in design, with a high ceiling that seemed to disappear into light. Alien officials sat around a floating dais, their eyes glowing faintly as they studied the couple. Their expressions were unreadable, but Alara felt the weight of their scrutiny. "Commander Thin." Mr. Kale, the eldest counselor, intoned, his voice resonating in the chamber. "We are pleased to welcome you to Zithra. We have observed humans before, but rarely in this Partnership. You are an unusual pair. Alara kept her composure, though a flicker of unease passed over her. We come in peace and with respect for Zytheran traditions, she said firmly. Kale stepped forward, standing straight, his hands calmly resting at his sides. We are here to learn, to cooperate, and to share knowledge, he said simply. His words were few, but the authority in his voice surprised even the counselors. There was no arrogance, no pretense, just clarity and honesty. The council murmured among themselves. Alara noticed some leaning closer to whisper to one another. The humans were unpredictable, yes, but perhaps that unpredictability was a strength, something the Zytherans had not fully considered after the introductions. They were shown to their quarters. The room overlooked the city, offering a panoramic view of its floating towers and gleaming streets. Kale walked to the window and rested his hands on the railing, studying the city below. Alara joined him. You seem calm, she said. Most humans would be overwhelmed by this place. Kale didn't turn, his eyes scanning the horizon. I like to watch first, he said. Learn, understand, then act. Alara laughed softly. That's very human of you. He finally looked at her, a quiet smile touching his lips. Maybe that's why I survived this long. The days passed quickly. Alara attended council meetings, discussed trade and diplomacy, and learned about Zythera's strict rules and intricate social systems. Kale mostly observed, rarely speaking, but always noticing details no one else seemed to see. He would quietly fix a device, redirect a hovercar stuck in the street, or offer a simple solution to a problem that had stumped multiple Zytherans. Each time, the council looked astonished. One evening, while walking through the market district, Alara saw something she had never expected. A small hovercart veered out of control toward a group of children. Before anyone could react, Kale stepped forward. His movements were sudden, precise, and almost impossible to follow. He grabbed the cart's controls, redirecting it safely away from the children. Then he turned back, calm and composed, as if nothing had happened. Alara's heart raced. She had suspected Kale had skills beyond ordinary, but seeing it in action made her realize how extraordinary he truly was. The Zytherans around them stared in silent shock, whispering among themselves. Even the children stared with wide eyes. That night, back in their quarters, Alara couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. Kale, what was that? She asked. He shrugged, sitting beside her. Just thinking ahead, watching the situation. Humans often notice things that others don't. It's instinct. Alara shook her head in awe. I knew humans were resourceful, but that was incredible and terrifying. Kale smiled faintly. I suppose it depends on perspective. Alara leaned against him, feeling both proud and anxious. She knew the days ahead would not be easy. Zythera was a world of rules, but humans thrived in chaos, and Kale was ready for whatever the universe might throw at him, even if the rest of Zythera wasn't prepared for him. That night, as the twin suns set and the city lights shimmered below, Alara realized something profound. She had married a quiet human, but she was beginning to see the truth. There was power in his calm, strength in his silence, and the galaxy, perhaps even Zythera itself, was about to learn just how unpredictable humanity could be. The quiet man at her side was not just a husband. He was a force waiting to awaken, and she would witness it all. The next morning, Zythera's twin suns rose over the crystalline towers, casting long reflections across the city's glimmering streets. Alara woke to the faint hum of the city, a rhythm that felt alive, almost like the heartbeat of the world itself. Kale was already awake, standing by the window, his hands resting lightly on the railing. He seemed to absorb the city with his quiet, calm eyes, as if he were measuring its pace, its order, and its secrets. Alara joined him, curiosity brimming. What are you thinking? She asked, brushing a lock of hair from her face. Kale did not look at her immediately. Watching patterns, he said finally, people, vehicles, energy flows. There is a rhythm here, but it is fragile. A small disruption, and it could cascade quickly. Alara frowned. Are you worried about something? Kale shook his head. Not worried, observing, learning. That morning, the couple ventured into the bustling market district. Floating platforms carried merchants selling exotic fruits, shimmering fabrics, and mechanical gadgets that hummed and glowed with strange energy. The air was filled with chatter, a mixture of alien languages and the faint hum of devices monitoring every corner. The Zytherans moved with elegant precision, their hands delicate, their steps calculated, and their eyes bright, constantly scanning. Kale walked slowly beside Alara, quietly absorbing everything. Unlike the Zytherans, he did not hurry. His gaze lingered on things others ignored: a small child trying to reach a floating fruit, a merchant frowning over a malfunctioning device, a hovering drone shifting its path to avoid a collision. Each observation was deliberate, noting weaknesses and opportunities invisible to others. Alara noticed a faint tension in the crowd. Rumors of unrest had reached her before, but seeing it firsthand was different. Several guards moved through the market, their luminous eyes scanning the crowd. But there was no panic. Yet the citizens whispered and glanced around nervously. Something was brewing, and Kel's quiet attention made her feel both safe and aware of the danger she might not even see. As they turned a corner, a hovercart suddenly veered out of control, heading straight toward a cluster of Zytheran children. The crowd froze for a moment, unsure how to react. In a blur of motion, Kale stepped forward. Before anyone could fully register what was happening, Kel's hands gripped the cart's controls. With a swift, precise motion, he redirected it away from the children, guiding it to a safe stop. The crowd gasped, then stared in silence. Even the hovering guards seemed momentarily stunned. Kale stepped back calmly, as if nothing had happened, adjusting his sleeve and walking toward Alara. "You didn't even hesitate," she whispered. Awe and disbelief in her voice, Kale looked at her with his calm brown eyes. "Why would I hesitate? The solution was obvious. I just acted." Alara shook her head. Humans were unpredictable, but Kel's unpredictability was different. It was methodical, intelligent, and efficient, unlike the Zytherans, who relied on rules and routines. Kale relied on instinct and creativity, something the aliens could never fully anticipate. As they continued through the market, Kel's quiet attentiveness drew the attention of a few merchants. A man selling glowing devices whispered to his neighbor, "He is human. And yet, there is something unusual. See how he moves, how he watches." Alara noticed the subtle reactions but chose to ignore them for now. "Do you feel out of place?" she asked softly. Kale considered her question, then shook his head. "No, I notice more because I am human. I see patterns others cannot. That is why humans survive." Alara smiled faintly, a mix of admiration and concern. She had known humans were adaptable, but Kel's abilities were extraordinary. And in Zythera, a world of rules and precision, his unpredictability could either save them or bring danger. By midday, they reached a quieter street lined with smaller shops and workshops. A small group of cloaked figures was moving quickly through the alleyways. Something about them felt wrong, to deliberate, to careful. Kel's eyes narrowed. "They are watching us," he said quietly. Alara glanced around. The figures had blended into the crowd, almost invisible, but Kale had already noticed. "What should we do?" she asked. Kale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he observed their movements, predicting their next steps. "Stay close," he said finally, "and follow my lead." The cloaked figures moved faster, heading toward the main plaza. Kale led Alara through a series of side streets, avoiding attention while keeping the group in sight. His movements were fluid, precise, and unassuming, yet every step was calculated to maintain an advantage. Finally, they reached a small rooftop garden overlooking the plaza. From this vantage point, Kale could see the entire area below. The cloaked figures were gathering near a transport hub, whispering rapidly to each other. One of them gestured toward the council's tower. "They're planning something," Kale said softly. "Not just mischief. Something serious." Alara's heart raced. "Should we alert the council?" Kale shook his head. "Not yet. We need proof, and we need to see what they are capable of. Humans survive by understanding their enemy, not panicking." Alara marveled at his calm. She would have panicked, screamed, or run. But Kale observed, calculated, and prepared. She realized, more clearly than ever, that this quiet human had strengths beyond anyone's imagination. Hours passed as they watched. The cloaked figures moved with efficiency, but their plans were flawed in subtle ways, small errors that only someone paying attention could notice. Kale pointed them out quietly. A guard distracted, a loose connection in a hovering device, an angle of approach that left them exposed. "You see it?" he asked. Alara nodded slowly. "I see it, but how do you know all of this so fast?" Kale shrugged. "Observation, logic, and intuition. Humans excel at improvisation. That is why we survive in chaos." As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the cloaked figures finally left the plaza, slipping into shadowed alleys. Kale turned to Alara. "They will act again. And when they do, we must be ready." Alara felt a mix of awe and fear. This human she had married, so quiet, so calm, held a power she could not yet fully understand. But she trusted him completely, and she realized that Zithra, for all its rules and order, had no defense against someone like Kale, a human who could think beyond boundaries, act beyond rules, and survive where others might fail. That night, as they returned to their quarters, the city lights glittered below like a sea of stars. Kale remained unusually silent, lost in thought as he scanned the patterns of energy and movement he had observed. Alara finally spoke. "Kale, tomorrow, you will need to tell the council about what we saw." He shook his head. "Not yet. Let them see the results first. Let them understand humans in action, not just in words." Alara realized that Kale's quietness was not weakness. It was patience, strategy, a strength that would guide them through whatever dangers were coming. That night, sleep was elusive. Alara lay awake, listening to the hum of the city and the calm breathing of the man beside her. She felt a surge of pride and a flicker of fear. Pride, because she had married someone extraordinary. Fear, because Zithra would soon discover what she already knew. A human was unpredictable, unstoppable, and capable of feats beyond imagination, and Kale, the quiet man beside her, was only beginning to reveal his true nature. The city slept, unaware of the silent observer in their midst. The human who had married their diplomat was watching, learning, and preparing. And when the time came, he would act, and no one, not even Zithra, would be ready. The city of Zithra shimmered under the twin moons, casting silver light across the crystalline towers and floating bridges. Most of the city slept, but not all. Somewhere in the shadowed alleys, movement stirred, silent, careful, and deliberate. Kale and Alara were aware that the cloaked figures from the market had not disappeared. They were waiting, planning, and watching. Alara moved quietly through their quarters, arranging maps and devices Kale had brought from Earth. He was already at the window, his silhouette still calm and focused against the city lights. She watched him for a moment, marveling at his stillness. There was no tension in him, no panic, only observation. She had learned to trust him, but tonight the trust would be tested. "They're back," Kale said softly, without turning. His voice was low, but Alara's pulse quickened. She moved to his side. "How do you know?" "Instinct," he said simply. "I can feel their pattern. They think they are hidden, but they leave traces. Every movement, every adjustment in the energy flows. They are not careful enough." Alara frowned. "So what do we do?" Kale turned to her, his eyes steady. "We wait, watch, and prepare. Humans survive by understanding, not rushing." The minutes stretched into hours. From the high balcony of their quarters, Kale observed the city. Shadowed figures moved along the rooftops and alleyways, their motions calculated, but flawed. Alara noticed his calm as unnerving and amazing. Every slight flicker of light, every small shift of a device, every echo of a footstep was catalogued in his mind. Then, suddenly, the ambush began. The cloaked figures dropped silently from the rooftops, their weapons designed to stun and capture. A small drone buzzed toward Kale's window, scanning. Without hesitation, Kale moved. He was faster than any human should have been, slipping past the drone's sensors and intercepting the first attacker. With a swift motion, he disarmed the figure, using the momentum of their charge against them. Alara watched in disbelief. He's incredible, she whispered to herself. Kale didn't answer. His focus was absolute. The attackers were skilled, but he anticipated every move. His hands moved with precise timing, blocking, redirecting, and disarming. Every strike was controlled, never excessive, yet entirely effective. The room filled with the faint hum of energy weapons, the soft thud of bodies hitting the floor, and Kel's quiet breathing. Steady as ever, Alara realized in that moment that she had underestimated the extent of his skills. He was not just quick. He was a strategist, a tactician, a human who could read an opponent like a map and navigate it effortlessly. The attackers regrouped, now circling, trying to overwhelm him. Kel's movements became a dance, smooth and precise. He drew a sleek, plasma-edged blade from a concealed sheath at his hip. The light from the blade cast a glow on his face, revealing determination, focus, and a strength that went beyond muscle. It was will, instinct, and experience combined. Alara's breath caught. She had never seen him draw that blade before. The quiet human she had married had transformed into something else, something dangerous, calculated, and unstoppable. They won't leave without a fight, Kale said, his voice calm but firm. And neither will I. With a fluid motion, he intercepted the next wave of attackers. Each strike was precise, each movement calculated to neutralize without unnecessary force. The attackers tried to adapt, but Kel's human unpredictability made him impossible to anticipate. He moved like a force of nature, using their strength against them, exploiting every weakness. Alara wanted to shout, to run, to intervene, but she stayed back, knowing this was his battle. And she realized something profound. Humans were not always the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced, but they were adaptable, clever, and fearless in ways that Zytherans could not understand. The skirmish continued, the attackers becoming desperate. Kale noticed their exhaustion and took advantage, leading them toward a narrow corridor where their numbers would count for less. With a few swift motions, he disarmed the remaining figures, forcing them to retreat. Finally, the room was quiet again. The attackers were gone, leaving only faint traces of their energy devices behind. Kale sheathed his blade and leaned against the wall, calm as if he had merely walked across the room, not faced multiple armed enemies. Alara stepped forward, her eyes wide. Kale, that was unbelievable. How did you? Kale smiled faintly, his calm returning. Observation, understanding, action. Humans do not need to act immediately. We act correctly. That is why we survive. Alara shook her head in awe. She had always known humans were resourceful, but Kale was something more. He was the perfect combination of patience, intelligence, and instinct. And now, she saw firsthand the truth she had sensed from the beginning. Zythera had underestimated humans. Entirely. The next morning, the city was calm again, though a subtle tension lingered in the air. The council had been informed of the ambush, though they had not witnessed it themselves. Their faces were masks of disbelief and curiosity. How could one human fend off so many trained attackers? Alara and Kale met with the council in the central chamber. The official's glowing eyes followed Kale as he entered. He did not speak much, only answered questions with clarity and calm precision. But the counselors could see the truth in his actions. He was extraordinary. The humans are different than we imagine, one counselor admitted, his voice a mix of awe and caution. One cannot simply predict them with rules and technology. They think, they adapt, they act in ways we cannot anticipate. Kale nodded slightly. We survive because we learn, because we observe, because we do not assume the world will stay the same. Another counselor frowned. And you, Kale, you are willing to risk yourself to protect others, even against superior forces? Kale's brown eyes met theirs steadily. Yes, if a threat can be stopped, it should be. That is what humans do. We do not wait for things to worsen. We act. Alara watched him closely. His quiet nature had hidden this strength all along, but now it was visible to all. She felt a swell of pride. This was the human she had married, the one who could remain calm in chaos, act decisively when needed, and inspire trust even in those who doubted him. Days passed, and Kale continued to study the city, observing the movements of citizens, patrols, and any signs of unrest. He noticed subtle inconsistencies in the patrol routes, weaknesses in the city's security systems, and patterns in the rebels' activity that others overlooked. Each observation gave him insight. Each insight gave him an advantage. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park suspended above the city, Alara spoke. Kale, the council. They fear humans. They fear what you can do. Kale glanced at her, expression calm. Good. They should respect humans, not underestimate us. Fear is often the first step toward respect, but respect is earned through action, not words. Alara nodded, understanding. The quiet human beside her was teaching her and the council an important lesson. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but also brave, resourceful, and capable of turning weakness into strength. That was their power. Suddenly, a faint shimmer in the air caught Kel's attention. He stopped, signaling Alara to stay back. From the shadows, a small scout drone approached, scanning. Kale moved, silent and precise, intercepting it before it could alert anyone. With a quick adjustment, he disabled it, leaving no trace. Alara gasped softly. How do you always see these things? Kale smiled faintly. Observation, patience. Humans notice what others ignore. That is why we survive, and why we can protect those who cannot see the danger until it is too late. The night stretched on, filled with a sense of quiet vigilance. Kel's skills, his instincts, and his calm determination were now fully evident. The city of Zithra was not ready for a human like him, not even its strict rules. Advanced technology, or disciplined guards could predict or counter his actions. Alara realized she had married more than a quiet man. She had married a force of nature, humanity in its finest, most adaptable form. And she understood that whatever threats the future held, they would face them together, with Kale leading the way. As they returned to their quarters, the twin moons reflected on the crystal towers, casting long shadows across the city. Kale remained calm, patient, and watchful. Alara followed, filled with admiration and a quiet certainty. Humans were underestimated at their peril. And Kale was living proof of why. Tonight, the city slept, unaware of the quiet observer who had protected it and who would continue to do so. The human who had married their diplomat was more than ordinary. He was extraordinary. A hidden blade in the calm, waiting for the moment to strike again. And when that moment came, Zithra would see exactly what humans were capable of. The city of Zithra had regained its calm, but Kale knew better. Beneath the orderly streets and the shimmering towers, a hidden threat was still gathering. The cloaked factions that had attacked them before were not defeated. They were merely waiting for the perfect moment. Kale's quiet observation had revealed their patterns, their weaknesses, and their hidden bases. Humans survive in chaos, he thought, because we act where others hesitate. Alara walked beside him on the balcony of their quarters, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Kale, do you think the council understands what we're facing? He shook his head slightly. They see only what is visible. They do not account for adaptability, for improvisation, for the unpredictable. That is why humans are underestimated. Alara nodded, feeling both fear and pride. She had witnessed his skills before. But this would be different, this time. Kale would not simply defend, they would strike before the rebels could act. By early morning, Kale had gathered a small group. It was a mixture of humans who had arrived on Zithra for trade or research, and Zytherans who had quietly pledged loyalty to the council. Together, they formed a resistance, quiet, precise, and invisible. Kale explained the plan simply, in his calm, low voice. We observe, we adapt, we strike, we exploit weaknesses, not force strength. The enemy expects patterns, humans break patterns. The group moved through the city's hidden paths. Kale led them, moving with a fluid, natural confidence that drew admiration and trust. He showed them how to use the city's technology, not as slaves to its rules, but as tools to outsmart the rebels. They set small traps, created diversions, and manipulated energy flows to hide their movements. Alara followed closely, amazed at Kel's strategy. He did not rely on weapons alone, he relied on understanding. The city moves like a machine, he explained quietly, and every machine has a flaw. Humans find the flaws, then act. As night fell, the rebels made their move. Cloaked figures surged through the lower districts, attempting to seize control of transport hubs and communication centers. Kel's team was already in position, invisible in the shadows. The humans acted unpredictably, moving silently, disabling energy barriers, redirecting drones, and neutralizing traps. The Zytherans on Kel's side followed instructions precisely, amazed at the simplicity and efficiency of his methods. The first encounter came swiftly. A group of rebels reached a bridge connecting to towers. Attempting to cut off reinforcements, Kale observed, then acted, with a simple hand signal. The humans moved to block one side, while another used a small device to disrupt the rebels' comm signals. Kale confronted the lead attacker, his plasma blade drawn. Unlike before, he did not fight alone. His team moved in perfect coordination, each action complementing the other. Rebels found themselves confused, unable to predict the humans' strategies. Every attempt to regroup failed. Kel's calm, precise strikes neutralized the threats without unnecessary force. Leaving attackers stunned and unable to continue, Alara watched from a nearby rooftop. Holding her breath, she had seen Kale in battle before, but this was different. He was not just defending, he was leading. His mind worked like a chessboard, moving pieces, predicting reactions, and forcing the enemy into traps they could not see. Humanity was not only surviving, it was dominating. Across the city, other small teams followed Kel's strategy. They used diversions to draw rebels away from key points, disabled security drones to allow safe passage, and communicated with silent signals that Zytherans could not have imagined. The human unpredictability created chaos among the rebels, forcing them to make mistakes they could not recover from. The council watched from the central tower, their eyes wide with disbelief. "I have never seen such coordination," one whispered. "He does not fight like a single human, he fights like an army." Kel's focus never wavered. He noticed every gap, every hesitation, every error the rebels made. They had strength in numbers, but Kale had intelligence, adaptability, and the courage to exploit weaknesses. A human could be underestimated, yes, but underestimated humans were the most dangerous of all. Hours passed. The rebels began to falter, their movements disorganized, their communications broken. Kale moved swiftly to the heart of their operation, a hidden energy hub powering their devices and shields. He and a small team infiltrated the hub, quietly disabling defenses. The rebels arrived, too late, confronted not with overwhelming force, but with clever strategy and precise action. Kale confronted their leader, a tall figure cloaked in dark energy armor. The fight was swift. Kale's plasma blade met the leader's weapon, moving with speed, accuracy, and efficiency. Every strike Kale made was calculated to exploit a weakness, and every move of the rebel leader was anticipated. Within moments, Kale disarmed him, forcing surrender without unnecessary harm. The remaining rebels, seeing their leader neutralized, surrendered quickly. Kale's team secured the hub, redirected energy flows to restore the city's systems, and ensured that no civilians were harmed. Humanity had struck decisively, not recklessly, but with intelligence and precision. Alara joined Kale at the hub, her heart pounding. You led them all. You saved the city." She whispered. Kale sheathed his blade, calm as ever. "We saved the city. Humans adapt, humans survive, humans protect. That is what we do." The Zytherans followed the plan because they trusted the method, but it was human thinking that made it succeed. The council arrived shortly after, their expressions a mix of awe and respect. "Kale, your actions, they have changed how we see humans," one counselor said. "You're calm. Your strategy, we underestimated your species." Kale shook his head slightly. "Do not underestimate anyone. The universe is full of variables. Humans act, adapt, and survive in ways others do not. That is all." Alara felt a surge of pride. The quiet human she had married, the man who observed, calculated, and acted with patience had not only protected the city, but had shown its inhabitants the strength of humanity. Zithra would never see humans the same way again. That night, the city celebrated quietly. Citizens returned to normal, unaware of how close they had come to disaster. Kale and his team worked in silence, restoring systems, securing weak points, and ensuring no trace of the rebels' plans remained. Humanity's unpredictability had won the day not with overwhelming force, but with intelligence, patience, and courage. Alara walked beside Kale as they returned to their quarters. "The Council, they will never forget this," she said softly. Kale smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but they will remember it better if they see, not hear. Humans show strength in action. Words are less important." Alara nodded. She had learned that the quiet man beside her held not just strength, but wisdom, strategy, and courage. Humanity was underestimated on Zithra, and Kale had proven why that was a mistake. The night air was cool as they reached their quarters, and the city lights twinkled below like a field of stars. Kale remained calm, observing the subtle movements of energy and shadow in the city. Alara felt a quiet certainty. Whatever threats came next, humans and this quiet, remarkable man would be ready. The battle had been won. But the war for Zithra's future was just beginning, and Kale, the quiet human who acted with precision and courage, would be at the center of it. Humanity had struck once, but their strength, intelligence, and unpredictability would continue to shape the fate of worlds. Alara realized that she had not only married a human, she had married a force capable of changing the course of history, and she would follow him, proud, awed, and certain of the power humans carried in their quiet, unassuming way. As the city slept, Kale's presence remained a silent shield. His blade rested in its sheath, ready for the next challenge, and somewhere, in the shadows, enemies would learn, as humans had shown before, that courage, intelligence, and adaptability were forces no technology or army could predict. Humanity had struck. Humanity had won. And Kale, the quiet man she had married, had shown the universe exactly why humans were a force to be reckoned with. The city of Zithra was alive with quiet energy. After Kale and his team had disrupted the rebel attacks, the streets seemed calm. But Alara knew that danger still lingered. The remaining factions had retreated, regrouped, and were undoubtedly planning their next move. Kale, ever observant, had already mapped the likely hideouts and patterns of their movement. Alara followed him as he moved through the upper city streets, silent and alert. His calm demeanor was reassuring, yet it carried a weight of focus she had rarely seen. Humans could survive where others would panic, and Kale was the perfect example. "They are clever," Alara said softly. "They may strike again tonight." Kale nodded, scanning the rooftops and alleyways with sharp eyes. "Clever, yes, but predictable in their mistakes. They rely on strength and numbers. We rely on strategy and adaptation. That is why humans survive." The couple reached a hidden courtyard atop one of the crystalline towers. Kel's team was already assembled, humans and a few Zytherans who had pledged loyalty to the Council. Each member moved with quiet purpose, following Kel's instructions without hesitation. Kale addressed them calmly. "Tonight, we finish what we started. We do not fight recklessly. We observe, adapt, and act. The enemy underestimates us because we are unpredictable. That is our advantage. Use it wisely." The team nodded, their expressions a mixture of determination and respect. Kel's quiet authority inspired trust. Humans were not the fastest or the strongest compared to Zytherans, but their ability to think, adapt, and act in unexpected ways gave them an edge no one could ignore. The first wave of rebels appeared at the southern perimeter, attempting to disable a communications tower. Kel's team was ready, using signals, diversions, and precise movements. They intercepted the attackers before they could reach their objective. Kel's plasma blade glowed in the dim light as he moved with controlled efficiency, disarming opponents and redirecting their attacks. Alara watched from the shadows, holding her breath. She had seen Kel fight before, but tonight was different. He was not just defending, he was leading. Every decision, every movement, was calculated to maximize effect while minimizing harm. The rebels tried to regroup and push toward the central city. Kale anticipated their strategy, using small teams to flank them, create diversions, and disable energy devices that could give the rebels an advantage. The humans' unpredictable actions confused and disrupted the enemy's plans. Scytherans watching from nearby towers whispered among themselves. How did they act so differently? One asked. It is not training, it is instinct. Hours passed, the battle moving like a carefully orchestrated dance. Kel's calm focus never wavered. He moved through the streets and rooftops with silent precision, always several steps ahead. The rebels' confidence faltered. They had relied on numbers, technology, and predictable tactics. Kale and his team relied on strategy, observation, and human ingenuity. Finally, the rebels attempted a desperate move, a concentrated attack on the council's central tower. Kale knew this would be their last attempt. He moved quickly with his team, setting traps, blocking pathways, and redirecting the attackers into narrow corridors where their numbers counted for little. The confrontation was intense. Energy blasts lit the dark streets, metal clashed against metal, and shouts echoed in the night. Kel's calm, methodical movements contrasted sharply with the chaos around him. He disarmed the leader of the attack with precise strikes, forcing surrender without unnecessary harm. His team swiftly secured the area, neutralizing the remaining attackers. Alara ran to his side once the last rebel was subdued. Kale, you did it again, she said, her voice filled with awe. Kale sheathed his blade, calm as ever. It is not about one person. It is about understanding, acting, and protecting those who cannot defend themselves. Humans survive by adapting. That is all. The council arrived shortly after, their faces a mixture of relief, astonishment, and respect. Kale, your actions tonight have changed everything, one counselor said. Humans, we have underestimated your kind. We now understand your strength is not just in skill, but in intelligence, courage, and adaptability. Kale nodded. Do not underestimate anyone. Every species has its strengths. Humans act in ways that cannot always be predicted. That is why we survive and why we protect those we care for. Alara watched as Kale quietly interacted with the counselors. His calm, patient demeanor, combined with decisive action, left a strong impression. Zither's leaders realized that humans were not just unpredictable. They were capable of changing the course of events entirely. The following days were spent securing the city. Kale and his team worked with the council to identify remaining threats, reinforce security systems, and train teams to act with strategy rather than relying solely on rules or numbers. The humans' approach fascinated the Scytherans. Where technology alone failed, human insight succeeded. Where predictable rules were exploited, creativity prevailed. One evening, as the city lights shimmered across the towers, Alara and Kale walked along a quiet bridge. Kale, she said softly, you've shown them something they never expected. Not just your strength, but the strength of humans. Kale glanced at her, his calm expression unwavering. Humans survive by thinking differently, acting when others hesitate, and never underestimating possibilities. That is why we endure. That is why we protect. That is all. Alara smiled, understanding the depth of what he meant. The quiet human she had married was more than extraordinary. He was a living example of humanity's adaptability, courage, and intelligence. He had faced overwhelming threats, turned the tide of battle, and earned the respect of a world that had underestimated humans. The council formally recognized humans as allies of Zithra. They understood now that humans were not merely another species, they were unpredictable, resourceful, and capable of feats that even the most disciplined Scytheran could not anticipate. Alara and Kale returned to their quarters, exhausted but unbroken. The city slept peacefully, unaware of how close it had come to disaster and how a quiet human had saved it. Kale sat by the window, watching the city, calm as ever. Alara joined him, placing her hand on his shoulder. The city owes you more than it knows, she said softly. Kale shook his head slightly. It is not about thanks. It is about action. Humans protect, adapt, and endure. That is all. Alara leaned against him, feeling a mix of pride, awe, and love. She had married a man who was quiet, patient, and unassuming, but who possessed a strength and wisdom beyond anything she had imagined. Humanity, in its calm and clever way, had proven itself on Zithra. The twin moons reflected on the crystal towers, casting long shadows over the city. Kel's presence was a silent assurance of safety, his blade resting quietly in its sheath, ready if needed. And the citizens of Zithra, though unaware, were protected by the quiet hero who had married their diplomat. Alara realized that Kel's true power was not in weapons or strength, but in his mind, his courage, and his ability to act when others hesitated. That was the essence of humanity: clever, adaptable, fearless in ways others could not understand. As the night deepened, the city remained calm, secure, and peaceful. Kale stood by the window, watching over Zithra with patience and quiet vigilance. Alara at his side understood something profound. She had married more than a man. She had married humanity itself, living, breathing, and unstoppable in its quiet strength. And so, the quiet human who drew his blade not recklessly, but with precision and purpose, became the silent protector of a world that had once underestimated his kind. Zithra would remember the courage, intelligence, and adaptability of humans, and the quiet hero who had proven their worth. For Kale, there was no need for praise. His satisfaction lay in the knowledge that humans had acted, survived, and protected others. That was enough. And for Alara, watching him, she knew that the universe would never underestimate humans again. Not after seeing the quiet man she had married draw his blade, and show the galaxy exactly what humanity could achieve.